Congratulations on your marriage, I said. Can you leave quickly after dropping off some cash? It's uncomfortable to be around someone who is disabled. I'm an adult who has been married for a few years. Shortly after my wedding, I was in a car accident and lost the use of both my legs. Every week, I go to rehabilitation, but I still have to use a wheelchair to get around. When I first found out I need a wheelchair for life, I was shocked, but my wife, in-laws, and other family members have been very supportive and kind to me. Their care helped me stay positive and work hard during my difficult rehab process. Because I work from home, I've managed to adjust and live comfortably in a wheelchair. My wife and her family have been very considerate towards me, but there's one person who has been a problem: my brother-in-law. He's a smart guy, well respected at his job, and comes across as a good person. When I first met him at my wife's parents' house, I thought he was a nice man, but when he found out I was in a wheelchair because of the accident, he showed his true colors. The worst part is that my brother-in-law is disabled. Don't make things hard for our family, he said to me one day. That's not something you say to someone who just had a serious accident. When my wife and I visited my in-laws' house, he told me, "Could you not bring your wheelchair inside? Leave it outside. It's in the way." Hearing that drained me emotionally. He always made comments like this when we were alone, never in front of my wife or his parents. It was sneaky. It upset me, but I tried to tolerate it, thinking maybe he was just concerned about my condition. But it didn't stop. He kept saying hurtful things every time I saw him. Then, one day, my brother-in-law announced that he was getting married. His bride was the daughter of the president of the company where he works. The president liked him so much that he asked him to marry his daughter. Even though I was upset about his past behavior, we still wished him well for his marriage. As the wedding planning continued, we received our invitations. I checked attending on the card and sent it back. Everyone was looking forward to the big day. We arrived at the wedding venue mentioned in the invitation. The wedding was a grand event held at a well-known hotel. Since the bride was the daughter of the company president, it looked like many important guests were invited. I knew they had spent a lot of money on this wedding. My wife needed to use the restroom, so I waited in a corner of the ceremony hall. While I stood there, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "The worst thing you can do is marry an ugly woman, but I'm putting up with it because she's the boss's daughter. Marrying into a rich family means I'll be living the good life. I'll endure being married to someone unattractive if it means I can be happy forever." It was my brother-in-law talking to his friends, making fun of the bride. After a while, he left, and I went back to my wife. I thought about telling her what I had just heard, but she was so happy about his marriage that I didn't want to ruin her mood. So, I stayed quiet. When I got to the groom's waiting room, my brother-in-law and my in-laws were already there, talking. "Congratulations on your marriage," I said. "Thank you for coming," he replied with a smile. He was so friendly that I couldn't believe this was the same person who had been saying awful things about the bride just a few minutes ago. Then he said, "I'd like to talk to you alone. The others can go rest in the waiting room." He led me down an empty hallway. Once he checked that no one else was around, his expression changed. "Why are you here? Having a disabled person in the family is embarrassing," he said in the same cruel voice he used when talking about the bride. "Just go home after you've paid for the celebration. It's inconvenient for the bride's family to have a disabled person like you here." Why was he saying this when I only came to congratulate him? I was furious, but I also felt like I didn't belong there. Maybe he was right. Maybe people would find it uncomfortable to see me in a wheelchair. I had no choice but to leave, as he suggested. "I'll make an excuse to my wife," I said quietly. My brother-in-law just laughed at me as I left. On the way home, my phone rang. It was my wife, panicking because she realized I wasn't at the wedding anymore. I told my wife that I was on my way home, but she insisted that I come back to the wedding. "You know how much trouble someone like me causes for everyone." "Right," I said, hinting at what my brother-in-law had told me earlier, but I didn't tell her exactly what he had said. "Who told you that?" she asked, sounding upset. "No one should ever say something like that, and if anyone does, I'll be the one to yell at them." I felt really happy that my wife was so angry, almost as if someone had insulted her directly. Hearing her words gave me the strength to return to the wedding. As soon as I got back, my wife ran up to me, looking relieved. My in-laws were also happy to see me return, but my brother-in-law was furious. "Why did you come back? I told you that people with disabilities are just a nuisance," He shouted at me in anger. People in wheelchairs are a burden on society, so leave. When my wife heard him yelling, she lost her temper and told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. I've already told you that people like him aren't welcome here. It's annoying having him around, he continued. His nasty comments didn't stop. Then, a guest nearby overheard my brother-in-law arguing with my wife and came over. Other guests also started to notice the commotion in the ceremony hall. The bride and her father saw something was wrong and walked over to us. But even as they arrived, my brother-in-law kept insulting me. I couldn't take it anymore, so I pulled out my phone and played a recording of something he said earlier. The worst thing you can do is marry an ugly woman, but since she's the boss's daughter, I'll put up with it. My brother-in-law's face turned pale. He started to panic and tried to deny it. That recording is fake, he said, looking very nervous. But I ignored him and kept playing the recording. I'm going to be rich and famous now. Marrying her means I can have all the money I want and enjoy life. The recording continued. My brother-in-law's face turned bright red, and he started shaking. He looked completely shocked and embarrassed in front of everyone. I don't mind marrying an unattractive woman if it means I get to live a rich life forever. The recording ended. After the recording finished, the guests started whispering to each other. My brother-in-law's face turned completely pale. He didn't know what to say and just stood there with his mouth open. The recording was from a conversation my brother-in-law had with his friends before the ceremony started. They didn't realize I was recording them. When my brother-in-law understood what had happened, he tried to grab me, but someone else stepped in before he could. It was the bride's father. He stood in front of my brother-in-law, silently warning him to stop. Mr. President, I'm sorry, but there's more to this situation, my brother-in-law said, trying to make excuses, not knowing who he was dealing with. This guy is a liar trying to make me look bad, he claimed, blaming me for everything. After listening quietly, the bride's father finally spoke. My late wife was born with a disability, he said softly. She spent her entire life in a wheelchair. He then explained that his dream was to create a business where people with disabilities, like his wife, could work comfortably. He didn't want someone like my brother-in-law, who looked down on disabled people, in his company. Hearing this made my brother-in-law panic even more. President, it's not my fault. It's all his fault, he stammered, still trying to blame me. But the bride's father ignored his excuses. The bride, shocked by what she just learned, stay calm. I'm canceling the wedding. I won't marry you, she said firmly. My brother-in-law, desperate, tried to reach out to her, but the bride's father blocked his way. The bride and her father then apologized to the guests, and the wedding was officially canceled. My brother-in-law collapsed to the ground and couldn't get back up. Many guests gave him and his friends cold looks as they left, because they were upset by what he had said. The bride decided to demand compensation for breaking off the engagement. Both the engagement and wedding were officially canceled. The bride's family made sure everyone knew what happened, including the cost of the wedding and everything my brother-in-law had said. The bride's father was an influential and powerful man in the community. Because of this, my brother-in-law was fired from his job at the bride's father's company. He tried to get another job, but no company would hire him, fearing the bride's father's influence. Even his friends abandoned him, refusing to help him find a job. With no other options, my brother-in-law left town. He ended up working long hours day and night in a faraway place, just to pay off the wedding expenses and the compensation. Sadly, he got into a car accident and became disabled himself, just like the people they used to mock. As for me, I'm now able to walk again, thanks to my wife's constant support and the tough rehabilitation I went through. On weekends, my favorite thing to do is go shopping with my wife. I try to repay her for everything she did for me and the burden I placed on her. Thank you for reading until the end.